On today's episode of Forensic Files, we are going to be discussing one of the most prolific serial killers in English history. Not only did they operate for a whole 27 years and evade capture that whole time, they escaped multiple mental institutions and are suspected of killing over 400 children. And the best part is, you've probably never even heard of her name. Welcome back to Forensic Files. Today, we are going to be discussing Amelia Dyer, better known as the Reading Baby Farmer. Born in 1837, she operated from 1869 to 1896. She was hung in 1896 for the death of one baby. However, she is presumed to have killed more than 400 over her 27 years active killing span. During that time, she was put away into multiple mental institutions or just punished to hard labor. However, she continued to escape and kill children. The better question is, how did she get away with it for all those years?
After taking care of her mentally insane mother in her childhood, she became a registered midwife. However, when she had her own children at the age of 26, she was forced to stop practicing. That is when she ran into another midwife, Ellen Dane, who taught her to exploit the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834. This law made it so fathers of illegitimate children were no longer financially responsible for the child. This led to the common practice of baby farming. Baby farming involved mothers of illegitimate children dropping their kids off to women who opened their houses for a fee. These women would then take care of these children, quote unquote. However, they would usually just neglect them or let them starve until they died. Amelia, however, took a different method. She started using a common serum called the Mother's Helper, or an opium serum. This serum would make it so the children would die much faster instead of having to take care of them and wait for them to die naturally. She used it to stop their suffering. During her first rounds of killings, she took each of her deceased children to the doctors. This was so that each of the children could receive a death certificate. This was so that way she was not doing anything illegal per se. However, this made the doctor extremely suspicious because every single one of her children were dying, and he reported her to the police. The police then sentenced Amelia to 6 months hard labor and locked her up in a mental asylum. However, because of her childhood taking care of her mentally insane mother, she knew how to act sane and therefore was released. During her second rounds of killing, she decided not to use opium. However, she decided to change her methods to strangulation. What would happen was she would charge the mothers a one-time flat fee in order to be able to kill them faster. After that, she would take the children and wrap them in a plastic bag and use her signature white edging tape. This was so the children did not have to die naturally or she did not have to get death certificates. She would then drop them in the River Thames. Every single time, she ended up getting put into an asylum, and this happened multiple times. However, because of her childhood and because of her nursing, she was able to realize how to act sane, and this led the caretakers to believing she was perfectly fine. She was known to have multiple aliases. Every single time she was captured, she would just go under a new alias in a new town in order to keep killing. After her first capture, Amelia became a very involved and professional killer. Every single time she would move to a new town under a new alias, she would reach out to these illegitimate children's mothers through the newspaper. This is where she would place ads for her one-time flat fee and caring for the children. While her first signature was considered the opium serum, her new and most common signature was the white masking tape she would use on all the children to suffocate them. Amelia was considered an extremely organized killer. She always used the same MO, the same signature, and knew exactly where to dump the bodies, most commonly in the River Thames. She never varied from her path. Her victimology was also always the same. She would always reach out through the newspapers to the mothers of illegitimate children. She never killed legitimate children, just illegitimate, illegal children. After the destruction of her own family, this was the only way for her to stay afloat financially. This was how she justified killing all of these children. In March 1896, there, however, became a breakthrough in the case under the most common alias of hers, Miss Thomas. This would be her last murder. Her last kid was named Helena Fry. She was discovered in March of 1896 in the River of Thames by Detective Anderson. As Dyer, or Mrs. Thomas, went to dump her in the River Thames, Fry's body was discovered by Detective Anderson 5 days later. Dyer was eventually found out as Mrs. Thomas and was sentenced to a hanging, and that is how she died in 1896.